All right. Welcome back, everyone. You know how we do things around here. Ready for another deep dive.
Absolutely. Always ready to dive in.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about something pretty fascinating. It's called the law of cause and effect,
Right.
sometimes called the karma of the mind.
Yes. And it's something that's been talked about, for centuries in all sorts of different traditions and everything.
Right. It's this idea that, I guess to put it simply, everything you do has consequences.
Yeah, it's often simplified into that sort of what goes around comes around kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. What you put out into the world comes back to you.
Yeah.
But today we're digging a bit deeper, right?
Yeah, we are. We're really going to look into this idea of the karma of the mind,
Right.
So not just our actions, but our thoughts and how those play a part in all this.
Yeah, yeah. And, you hear all this stuff about, like think positive and good things will happen. But is it really that simple? Like, what does it actually mean when we say that our thoughts can shape our experiences?
Right. It's not just some kind of, magical thinking,
Right.
It's not just like, oh, I'm going to think really hard about winning the lottery and it's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's much more nuanced than that. There's actually some really interesting research out there on this.
Okay. Like what?
Well, for example, there's a lot in cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That really looks at how our thoughts, especially those negative thought patterns we get stuck in, how those can actually lead to self-sabotaging behaviors and even attract negative experiences into our lives.
So you're saying it's not just about thinking positive thoughts to make good things happen, but also avoiding those negative thought patterns to, prevent bad things.
It's more about understanding the power of our thoughts, right?
Okay.
To recognize that they're not just these fleeting things, they have a real impact on how we feel, how we act, and ultimately what we experience in life.
Okay. So I'm getting how negative thoughts can, create more negativity. But what about those things that just happen to us? Where does that fit in?
It's a good question, right? Like if we're supposedly creating our reality with our thoughts, what about all the stuff that seems totally out of our control?
Right. Exactly.
Well, one way to think about it is that, you can have the same event happen to two different people.
Okay.
One person might be completely overwhelmed by it, right? They might focus on all the negative aspects and really get stuck in a spiral of fear and despair. But someone else might face that same situation and choose to focus on solutions, on what they can learn from it and how they can grow.
That's like the classic is the glass half full or half empty kind of thing.
Exactly. It's not about denying the reality of the situation, but understanding that our perception of it and how we respond to it is largely shaped by our thoughts and beliefs.
So, okay, I get it. Our thoughts are powerful.
Yeah.
But how do we actually, change our thought patterns? I mean, a lot of this stuff is so deeply ingrained, right?
Well, the first step is awareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there are tools for that. Practices like mindfulness and meditation can be incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Even just taking a few minutes each day to sit quietly, observe your thoughts without judgment.
Right.
You start to notice patterns, see which thoughts keep coming up.
Right, like those negative ones that just keep popping up on repeat.
Exactly. And from that place of awareness, you can start to shift those patterns, choose to focus on more positive and empowering thoughts.
I mean, it sounds simple enough, but I imagine it takes a lot of effort to actually, change those habits of thinking.
It's definitely a practice. It's not something that happens overnight, but even small, consistent efforts can make a big difference over time.
Okay, so to sum all this up, this law of cause and effect, this karma of the mind, it's a pretty powerful concept.
Yeah, it is.
It's a reminder that our thoughts aren't just these, random things floating around in our heads. They actually have a real impact.
And when we start to understand that connection, between our inner world and our outer experiences, it can be pretty transformative.
Definitely a lot to think about. So as we wrap this deep dive up, I got to ask, what one small change can you make today to cultivate a more positive inner world? Think about it. Because, as we've learned, even the smallest shift in your thinking can have a ripple effect on your whole life.
You never know how powerful a single thought can be.
That's a great point to end on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See ya!